A few months ago, 3 videos were uploaded to my channel featuring a sunrise, but there was never anything to suggest the completion of such painting, and no one ever knew what had happened to it. And the question remained, what was the outcome of this elusive painting? Basically, me being the genius 14-year-old that I was, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and take on trying to paint a 3x4 foot canvas, which is a lot bigger than it sounds. And at the time, I thought I just had it in the bag. Like, oh yeah, I'm motivated to do this. And I was, but not as motivated as I thought I had to be. I was kind of ignorant and just went head first into it without realizing what I was getting myself into. And that was why it ended up taking over 9 months to complete. So the painting is in entirely acrylic paints except for the sky, which I wanted to use oil paints for. And this was towards the beginning of my usage of oil paints. Nowadays I'm pretty much exclusively an oil painter, but back in the day I used mainly acrylics, and honestly I'm kind of glad I did, because acrylic paints are a lot easier to work with for really large areas. But yeah, I was just doing this. This all happened in the course of one day actually, where I just sat down for like 4 hours and just painted forever. And one of my biggest mistakes was actually painting those trees there, because I accidentally left behind a lot of texture. And my whole plan had always been, oh yeah, I'm just gonna paint over it anyways. But I kind of screwed up and made some pretty thick paint there that you could still see the texture of later on. And bam, just like that, I was done with the underlayer, super excited, and I just kept painting. I was doing like this marathon of painting, more than I'd ever done at this point, especially the most I've ever done in one day. I made a ton of progress on the sky, and then I was super excited. I grabbed my SD card, ran upstairs, plugged it into my computer, and turns out the whole SD card was just bust, and none of what I had was recorded. That's great, but at the end of the day, while I was super mad in the moment, it forced my hand into getting a really good 128 gigabyte SD card, which can record for almost 24 hours. So, in the end, it was probably worth it. I haven't had any SD card troubles yet. But, yeah, basically that's what happened. This is the end result, and yeah, I just had to keep going, even though I had quite a bit of lost footage. So then I just continued working on the sky a bit. The cloud, in hindsight, looked horrible in the beginning, but I eventually got it. But the big kind of issue that I had with the sky was how to blend between the yellow and the blue. Because of course, when you look at the sunrise, there's typically like a yellowish color, but then there's also actual blue sky up above you, and making the transition was really hard because it would just become like a dark green. But eventually what I realized after I looked at a few other sunrises was that the colors are actually really, really bright, so that between the yellow and the blue, it's more closer to white, so there isn't as much of a chance for it to actually become a greenish color. And so what I did was I just lightened up the blue and lightened up the yellow where they kind of mixed together, and voila, it was a much better blend. Obviously it's not perfect, but compared to what it was before, it's pretty good. So once I was done with the sky, now suddenly I had a bit of an issue. Because when I was looking at the sunrise that day, I wasn't really focused on anything but the sky, if you know what I mean. Because it's one of the most beautiful sunrises I've ever seen. I'm not looking at the ground in front of me, I'm looking at the brilliant sky above. And in this painting, once I finished the sky and then took a look at the ground, I was like, well, this is awkward. I don't know how to finish this. And so I puzzled over it for a few days. A few days became a few weeks, and then eventually, once like a month had passed, I had moved on. I was working on another canvas because I couldn't just sit there staring at it the whole time. And this is when my motivation really just started dropping. This was kind of just the really long slog through it. Over the course of the next 5 months, I would, every few days, just pick up the painting and try to get something done. But every time, I simply wasn't enjoying it. I was feeling like I was taking 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards. At one point, I felt like every brush stroke I was making was just going 1 step further towards ruining the piece. And at many points, I contemplated just almost like wanting to burn the canvas. But I kept going very, very slowly. And you will see that a lot of these clips are really, really short. And that's because I was painting very, very infrequently and for very short periods of time because of my motivation loss. After a particularly long stretch of not working on it, I saw it in my art studio again, just up against one wall, when I had actually just finished painting another sunset painting, and I looked at it and just realized how far I had come, where suddenly, as an artist, I was painting stuff like this, but my sunrise from before still looked like this, and I didn't know what to do. I wanted to just move on because I knew that there was no way to salvage it and make it as good as some of my more recent paintings, but I also didn't want to just leave it unfinished. I would just be full of regret if I didn't finish something that I had spent so long at this point on. So I really had to just sit down and say, you know what? I know it's not going to be as good as before, and I'm going to stop striving to try and make it as good as some of my other ones. I just have to sit down, get it to a finished state, and just be ready to just call it done and move on. It was time to get the grind up. me over 10 minutes of this video to finally get to the point of
boring.
Some paintings will go amazingly well. In fact, most do. With most paintings, you finish it and you're just happy and so proud of what you've done. And other paintings are gonna really just try to kick you down every time you go. But in the end, the decision is always yours. I know some people would say, just press through at all costs, but that's not where it's at, because what you have to decide for yourself is, what do I want, and how can I use my time to become a better artist in the best way possible, and to just enjoy it more. Because at the end of the day, if you aren't enjoying what you're doing, there's no point in doing it, right? And so, as you're going, just, if you're losing motivation, you have to ask yourself, is the joy of finishing this worth more than hardship of getting through it? And would you enjoy being an artist more if you just moved on to something else? Because there's always that feeling of like, oh, but I've already spent so much time on this, it would be such a shame to kind of just like move on and act like this never happened because I spent like 20 hours on it. That's a very real feeling, and that's something that I struggled with a lot. But it basically just comes down to make the decision yourself. If you think that you just aren't enjoying it enough for it to be worth it, and you want it to be done, then you can move on. And no one's gonna judge you for that. And you have to make that decision. That's what I have to say. It kind of took me a while to get the point across, and hopefully I did get the point across, but that's what it comes down to. So this painting was a really long time in the making, and unfortunately had kind of an unsatisfying end, but that's just how it goes sometimes. And in the time I spent not painting that, I painted things that I'm way more proud of. So that's how it goes. And it took about 9 months, but I finally was able to share this story. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.